I wanted to be a pro fighter, and I blew out my knee, and I was rehabbing it, and I was all depressed, and I found out that this world champion had a blog, and this was back when people in MMA really weren't twittering and all that type of stuff. So I was following his blog and realized it had nothing to do about fighting. It was all about the problems he was having as an alcoholic. I come from a family of people that struggle with drug addictions and alcohol problems, and I wrote Evan and asked him if I could make a documentary about him sobering back up and trying to get back in the UFC. And then my uncle died, so I went back to Scotland and made a movie about my uncle. And then when I got back, Evan had passed away, so it kind of all went really fast, and I just figured I needed to pick up where I left off. That's how it all came about, and then I incurred. And something I'd just like to comment on is that we've faced that quite a few times with people prejudging the film. Oh, it's about an MMA fighter, we don't want it at our festival. And so I'm really happy that the guys here at JP, helped get us into this festival, because there's a lot of people that have turned us down specifically because it's an MMA film or it has a tap out logo, and it's kind of prejudging. It's like, watch the movie before you make it. Kirk's my producer, and he's looking at me like, don't tell any specific stories. So I've been caught for telling specific stories, but if you guys would like to hear a specific story, I'll tell you in private, not on the microphone. But so I had about 100 hours of interview footage. So there's 50 people, approximately about 100, almost 2 hours per interview on average, and then 50 hours of B-roll of just, Caprock High School and all random stuff, and then about 50 hours of archival footage, most of which was unusable. So I sat there and literally went through every interview. I watched them all as I was logging them and realizing that people were hitting the same points over and over and over. So I would write those points down as categories, and then I would go through each category and see who said it best. So 10 people would talk about, Evan drinking before a fight or whatever, and I would say, okay, this person said it best, this person said it best. And I tried to just label them, from like light green to bright green, this is go, and it was just a narrowing down process, and it took about 9 months to finally get it to where it's at. But there wasn't a specific, I actually looked at Evan's, the story is the alcohol was the antagonist to the film. And so just like a 3-act structure of a film, you meet the antagonist about a third of the way through. So that's why I introduced Evan as an alcoholic a third of the way through rather than at the start. So there was kind of some story structure that I was following, but not a specific script. I wanted to like, as the film progressed, show less and less fight footage, so that you stop thinking. Like, I wanted to introduce Evan as the fighter, and then just slowly but surely get away from that by the time the end of the film came. Which is also in our benefit, because we licensed UFC footage, and UFC footage is obviously very expensive, for the amount of time you get. So I mean, I think by the time we got to Evan's later UFC career, we didn't really need a lot of the footage at that point in the story.
Yeah, and I love the B-roll of Evan putting together that box that had a speaker, and he's bungee cording the box to put the speaker in his Jeep. It just showed you like how he lived, He's just off in the wilderness. He's not really, using his money to buy Ferraris or whatever. And it says a lot about the man. That's one of my favorite parts of the film.
Well, all you hear about is how much of a saint they were. In this case, y'all showed how good of a person he was and the struggles he went through in life also. Did y'all feel any pressure from friends or family just to show mainly how good of a person he was?
I would say that did occur at first. We were working with Evan's sister, and she was really attached to having it be a very, very positive lifestyle. And then when we got in the interview process, and we brought her along for a lot of it, and she really got
first couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks, she really got to see that it helped her get some growth and some closure as well. Once she saw, like, any human life, it's a series of ups and downs. It's not always good news.
Well, something you notice is that she's the only person in the film that got interviewed at 2 separate locations. She's wearing different clothes at the start of the film and the end of the film, because at first she had this, in her own words, an agenda to protect who she wanted Evan to be. So when I was doing interviews for the first, she was kind of taking over the interviews and telling people how they felt about Evan, and I realized that we had to part ways in the interview process. So when we headed out to Texas to do our interviews, we kind of stopped bringing her along. And then about a year later, she called me up and she said, you know, I feel that I did the wrong thing initially, and I want to come and give a genuinely honest interview. And that was the clip you see at the end of the film.
Yeah, and
We found out that from a third opinion that the fermentation in the body could have produced those levels, so it was inconclusive. So I found out that the Evans record was now public, and I could actually go back and cite that. So I ran into my duplication house and got my post-production guy to help me chop it up, and literally right before premiere, I'm running across LA back and forth trying to fix it and make sure that I could make amends to it.
Also, I think a lot of the guys, especially when you leave the sport or think about leaving the sport, you don't want, you want something else to be. You don't want to be a fighter because that's a very short amount of time. I mean, I had a long career. I had a 17-year-long career, but I'll probably live to close to 100, so that's only 17% of my life. What am I going to do with 83% of it, right? Am I going to be a fighter? And I think that was his fear. I think he did a really good job of showing that he was something, he was really trying to show the world that, hey, I'm something more than that. Now the platform of being a celebrity, because that's really, the fighter allowed him to become a celebrity. They allowed the people to actually pay attention to what he says, because for some reason we do that with celebrities, like they're smarter or something. But he really took advantage of that, and he did a lot of things, because I think he was probably more in touch with his demons than most of us. He was more open with explaining his demons than most of us. And I just think he did a really good job about trying to capture, showing people that his efforts to try to be something more than just a fighter was. I think he did a really good job on that. I think that's what he'd want us to remember him as. I don't want to be remembered as being a tough guy, but I'd rather be remembered as being a good dad and a good husband and a good man that did something in this world. And I think that's where he wanted to be too. I think he did a good job of showing that.